perfect riz, defended socialism, defended the simple, straightforward ideas. You know, how did the Bolsheviks campaign? Peace, land, bread. Freeze the rent, free buses, free childcare. 3 core promises that are focused on what people need. That is what socialists do when they are campaigning. That is how you convince people.
Changing your ways, change your ways. We're changing your name, change your name. Cheater, my.
Zohran Mamdani on Breakfast Club. Let's watch this and have some good vibes, man. I feel slightly a little bit shitty because I think I got like no sleep last night. I went to bed late and I got woken up like early. And so I went back to sleep. Major mistake.
That ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Just Hilarious, Charlemagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building. He's running for mayor of New York City. We have Zohran Mamdani.
Nailed it.
Hey,
Nailed it.
There we go. There we go.
That's that.
You gave him a great tutorial right before we started.
Absolutely. And I'll take it.
If you don't know, ask.
That's right. That's what I do.
I was going to say it was off the top of the dome, but
Now,
we can say
I
it's a
did
tutorial.
see your video. Before we get into politics, I did see your video. You were a rapper.
You got a bop. You got a bop on your hand.
I was an aspiring rapper.
Aspiring rapper.
Nobody will vote for you based off what I heard in that rap. Okay?
And that's why I'm not a rapper anymore.
Based off the quality of that rap, nobody will vote
You see, to be the mayor, you have to know what you know and know what you don't know.
Got you.
And I learned quickly what I didn't know.
You really wanted to like pursue a rap career at one point?
There was a point. I mean, it was at the level. So I was born in Kampala, Uganda, in East Africa. And there was a point where there was a guy I grew up with. He's like my brother. The two of us were rapping together.
Yo, come on. Socialist NYC mayor candidate Zohran Mamdani gets more money and royalties from hip-hop past as Mr. Cardamom tax returns. The New York Post is legitimately one of the dumbest, most worthless rags that has ever existed. Mr. Cardamom is terrible.
I'm going to make you a countryside chicken curry.
My name is Praveen. No. Hello, everyone.
I gotta add this to the
Pound
fucking
and a half of
playlist.
chicken.
I gotta add this to the
Stir and
playlist.
fry it again.
Mom? Yes, running countries is also simple and commonsensical. I don't know one's thought about it, but you, Mike. Well, if you understand politics, you'll understand that I don't think it's simple. I know why we have the politics we have, because there's something called the capitalist class. The capitalist class is making our government do things that are not in the interest of the common people, but in the interest of their narrow class position, because they have money and power and influence, and we live in a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. So for the bourgeoisie, sanctioning Venezuela is important because you want to demonstrate to third world countries and developing countries that they better not nationalize their natural resources and try to get their fair share of profit from it, because if they do, then the United States of America will destroy their country. That's why Venezuela is being attacked. That's why we're attacking Cuba, because Cuba is a socialist country and we don't want the power of a good example. So we do everything we can to sabotage those countries. I'm saying we should stop doing that.
Living in our house now, Mom. We're not living in yours. Why do I have to keep telling you this? And then on Wednesday, you forget to pick up Nikhil from school. All of your meddling and these questions and the TV serials cause you to lose sight of the fact that you are not a good nanny.
I'm the best damn nanny that you ever done seen. Fuck top 5 nannies and fuck top 3. I'm the number 1 nanny, don't fuck with me. Fuck any of the nannies, says they better than Praveen. Cause I'm 85 years old, 85 years cold, 85 years with my family on my back. So I'll outlast everybody on my fucking haters. Make it round for you. Make a sign for you. Give a crown to you. Bow down for you. Make it round for you. Make a sign for you.
This a Nani anthem, Jimmy another band time. Weight class, warp ass, and all you for ransom. Got a grandson that's handsome and then some. Spends his income.
Has Hasan seen this? Has Hasan seen this? Has Hasan seen this?
Dim sum to fill time. You talking retention.
Oh, he did? Okay.
I'm talking expansion. Got the whole squad, yeah, keep them at attention. And I'm not in the business of taking no tension. So, gather round now, celebrate me. I'm your boss, I'm your fucking Nani. Got a doctorate, bitch, so don't fucking try me. Don't need a nano, cause I'm living my G. Kitty, my G. Run this whole city like a Ramiyati. Stay setting people up, MC at the shawty. If you see me in the streets, don't be asking Guani.
Bow down for you. Make it round for you. Make a sign for you. Give a crown to you. Bow down for you. Make it round for you. Make a sign for you.
Go ahead, make a rap for your Nani.
It's a rap.
Get the guap, spin the rack on your Nani.
Spin the rack.
Come through, give a dab to your Nani. If you really feeling good, spin a track for your Nani. Go ahead, make a rap for your Nani.
It's a rap.
Get the guap, spin the rack on your Nani.
Spin the rack.
Come through, give a dab to your Nani. If you really feeling good, spin a track for your Nani.
You know, wow, I mean, that is such a left-wing thing to do. I have a lot of thoughts on this because it's like, one, he just doesn't mind being earnest and cringe, but he's also uplifting. He's uplifting, you know, older women, which is like the exact opposite of all rap tropes normally, right? Like it's about like respect. It's about like centering an older woman and just like having fun. Like he's legit. That wasn't cringe. Exactly. Well, he's not afraid to be cringe is what I should have said. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things that's so wholesome because it shows how good of a guy he is and how respectful he is and how he values women and he values people in our society that a lot of the time we take for granted and who are the backbone of our communities and our families. And he wanted to make her the star, right? Like, that's fucking respect. I really like that, you know? It's just like another Zohran W.
Together. And I was trying to sell mixtapes on a public bus, which doesn't leave until it fills every single one of the 14 seats.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much we were trying.
Wow.
And here I am, because it didn't really work out all that well.
It was kind of like Yin Yang Twins, where they were whispering.
I heard them.
I like the beat.
Was there an inspiration for you, the Yin Yang Twins, the whisper song?
I have to say that was an inspiration for the song I made called Nani.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, for me, it was also a way of just telling the different stories of what I grew up with.
Gotcha.
And especially in Kampala, you know, I'm Ugandan of Indian origin. The guy that I grew up with, his name is Abdul. He is Ugandan by way of South Sudan. It's all these different cultures coming together. We were trying to mix it all in. And then when I was here in New York City, just trying to kind of, the song that I made was a testament to my grandmother.
Gotcha.
And how she's a real badass. And how so often when we talk about our elders, we put them in a box of a nice, gentle person who, you know, is very much constrained in how we imagine them. And I wanted to just be a little more absurd in the celebration of a woman who gave me a sense of the world and was a social worker and should be a little more celebrated.
And disciplined you.
I mean, like, honestly, like, we love that. We love that. We love his fucking energy, man. It's called being a good guy. I think one of the things about Zohran, I like good guys. And we now live in a culture where a lot of young men are being told, don't be a good guy. Nice guys finish last. And it's a fucking lie. It is a fucking lie. It is an absolute, total fucking lie. Does that mean that being a nice guy means nothing bad is ever going to happen to you? The answer is no. Sometimes you're going to find people that try to take advantage of that. Sometimes you're going to find people that betray you. That's going to happen to you whether you're a nice person or a shitty person. But the more nice people we create, the less often that happens. We're actually creating these self-fulfilling prophecies. And what I love about Zohran, and also it's another reason why I like Hasan, is that we are just, people are assholes, but it doesn't change us. You know what I mean? Like we are still good people because the vast, vast majority of people are kind-hearted. The vast majority of people want to help each other. Yes, we all have flaws. Yes, we've all done things we're not proud of. But fundamentally, most of us are good most of the time. And we have this culture, especially on the right, of this kind of nihilistic detachment that to me reads as unresolved trauma. Like I look at Asmongold. I'm going to give you an example of Asmongold. Asmongold is without a doubt an example of the nihilistic trauma where you basically just take your suicidality and you transform it into this like ironic detachment where you go like, well, life is a joke. Life is suffering. So I'm just going to laugh at it. And it's like suffering and pain are part of our experience, but we're all on the same boat. And so we should help each other, keep our heads above water. We should all be bailing out the water that's leaking into the boat. We all should, we're all here together. When you suffer, it increases the chance that I get pulled under the waves.
And discipline.
A few slaps in Jackson Heights hurt nobody.
Oh, you got slapped?
In the video,
you got old school discipline.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
In that video, not by my grandmother.
So question, in real life, when you do make the pivot to, do what it is you're doing now, do you say to yourself, all right, scrub all that shit off the internet. We got to get rid of that.
No, because I think that it's about being a real person.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed that time in my life, and ultimately I actually see a through line between that work and this work in that you're trying to tell a story.
Got you.
And, when you're trying to sell a mixtape or you're trying to get somebody's signature to get on the ballot at 6:30 in the morning, at the Broadway stop of the NW in Astoria, it's the same thing where you're asking someone, can I have a moment of your time to tell you about my story or our story? And it also means learning how to deal with rejection very quickly.
Got you.
Because once you've tried to be an artist, once you tried to be a rapper, you know what it means to be humbled on a regular basis, right? You know what it means to be the opener to the opener to the opener to the opener to the opener. And I think too often in politics, there's a real sense of self as if people should be excited to see you, when in fact you should be excited to see them, right? We shouldn't be lecturing people as much as we should actually be listening to them.
Right.
And I think that, struggling through being an artist, it was very helpful in learning that.
I thank God nobody told you to use any of that hip hop stuff for your campaign. That's what they do. This is how you reach certain demographics. They're like, please, I thank God they didn't tell you to do that.
Don't worry, it's not coming.
Now, how'd you get into politics? What got you into politics? Because some of your policies that you want, we'll discuss, I don't see happening, but I love it. So let's start how you got into politics at first.
By the way, chat, this is the number one way that liberals argue. The number one way that liberals argue is, I like it, but I just don't see it happening. If you ever see a liberal arguing that way, call it out. Be like, okay, so you agree with me then. So why don't you help me convince them who doesn't agree with us? Since you agree with me, who doesn't agree? Give me an example of who don't agree. Call by name. Let's call them up together. You and I will tag team them and convince them. Since you agree with me, let's work on convincing other people.
So the first time I knocked on doors was in 2008 for Obama. The first time I knocked on doors in New York City was when I picked up a copy of The Village Voice and I saw that one of my favorite rappers, Heems, had endorsed his childhood friend for city council. And I was like, oh, this guy would be the first South Asian elected official in New York City. His name was Ali Najmi. And so I got on the F train. I went to 169th and I knocked on doors for Ali. And that was the moment where I started to get involved in local politics. I joined a club called the Muslim Democratic Club in New York. And then in 2017, I worked on my first race. That was for a Palestinian Lutheran minister in Bay Ridge called Qadr El Yatim. And that just changed my life because, I moved to this city when I was 7. This is the city I fell in love with, the city where I got my citizenship, where I got married. And yet there was also a point where I knew I was a New Yorker. I didn't know if I had a place in New York City politics. I thought those two things were separate. And then there was this campaign which showed me that there was room for all of us. And you didn't actually have to give up any of yourself to be a part of it. And that inspired me to understand that politics isn't just something that you believe in, it's also something that you do as an active thing. And from there, I kept working on campaigns. And then in 2020, I ran for the state assembly, and now I represent Astoria in Long Island City.
Wow.
Yeah.
The USA, the USA Today asked a question, and the question is simple. Can an AOC-backed socialist upset Andrew Cuomo in the New York City's mayor race? I want you to answer that question.
There's a short answer, which is yes.
Okay.
And there's a longer answer, which is the fact that New Yorkers are hungry for a different kind of politics. We have seen the same politicians with the same ideas lead us to the same results for decades. And this is in many ways a question of whether we want to go back to the past or whether we want to go to the future. And our campaign is one that sees this city under attack in 2 ways. An affordability crisis on the inside. We're the most expensive city in the United States of America. 1 in 4 New Yorkers are living in poverty. The rest are living in a permanent state of anxiety about whether they can keep affording this city. And then we're under attack from the outside from a Trump administration that is hell-bent on going after not only New Yorkers, but frankly, democratic cities across the country, like we're seeing in Los Angeles right now. And I am going head-to-head with Andrew Cuomo, a former governor who's the son of a former governor, whose super PAC is funded in large part by the same billionaires who put Donald Trump back in the White House. That's not the kind of person who can stand up to authoritarianism without seeing a reflection of themselves. We need someone who will actually fight both of these crises at the same time. And that's why I believe that I can win. And I'm so excited to have Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez's endorsement in doing that.
I wanted to ask, some of the policies that you stand on is free bus service in New York City.
Yes, sir.
Could that actually work?
Absolutely.
Break it down.
So I grew up in Morningside Heights. I would take the 1 train. We used to have the 9 train back then, but I would take the 1 train to 231st, get on the BX10 to go to Bronx Science. And I remember when I'd get off the 1 train, if I could still see the bus, even if it was 2 stops away, even if I had missed it, I knew I could catch up to it. Of course. Because that's how slow that bus was. I'd be slapping the back of the bus and I could get there in time. It was good for me. It's bad for New York City. You should not be able to catch that bus if you miss that bus. But the buses are so slow. So as a state assembly member, I won the first kind fare free bus pilot. We made 1 bus route free in every borough of New York City. And we secured $15 million to do so. And it showed that ridership went up by up to 38%. Assaults on bus drivers went down by 38.9%. And of the largest increase of riders came from New Yorkers making $28,000 a year or less. And this is critical because it's not just about economic access, it's also about public safety. It's also even about environmentalism because we're seeing that 11% of the new riders, they were previously driving a car or taking a taxi. Now they're off the road, they're on public transit. And the cost of doing all of this is about $700 million a year. Now, that sounds significant, which it is, but just want to put it into context. We're talking about that in the context of a city budget that's about $113 billion a year. State budget, about $252 billion a year. There is money. The question is what we spend it on. And what I've proposed is that we raise $10 billion to pay for our entire economic agenda and start to Trump-proof our city because we know he'll use federal funding as leverage over this city. And we will do so in 2 key ways. The first is to match the state's top corporate tax rate to that of New Jersey. We are at 7.25%. They're at 11.5%. Corporations can pay it over there. They can pay it over here. And the beauty of it is that it doesn't just apply to corporations headquartered in New York City. Because when you say this, people will say, well, they're going to go to Florida. Wherever you are headquartered, as long as you do business in the state of New York, you are taxable for that corporate tax. We're talking about corporations that are making millions of dollars, not in revenue, but in profit. And the second is taxing the top 1% of New Yorkers. We're talking about people who make $1 million a year or more, taxing them just by a flat 2% tax increase. And I know if 50 Cent is listening, he's not going to be happy about this. He tends to not like this tax policy, but I want to be very clear. This is about $20,000 a year. It's a rounding error. And all of these things together, they make every New Yorker's life better, including those who are actually getting taxed.
Now, you also want to cut the police budget, and people are upset about that, right? They feel like crime is all over the place. I think a couple of days ago, 2 people got shot in Times Square. The other day, I think another girl got shot in the face in the Bronx. So people are very scared. It seems like New York is getting worse than getting better. So what do you say that, at a time like this, cutting the police budgets, that seems like that is taking more police officers off the street?
I want to be very clear. We are not defunding the police. What we are talking about is sustaining the number of police that we have within the police department. And when I talk to those police officers themselves, they tell me they signed up to join the police force to tackle.
By the way, chat, I want to explain something to you. The biggest problem we have on the left is an inability to do politics. This is cutting the police. This is the tactic that the right wing and the centrists have used for decades, which is, I'm not cutting teachers. I'm going to keep the number of teachers we have very steady. And then you don't increase funding, or you increase funding less than inflation, and over time it starts to compound and compound and compound and compound and compound. That is, he's using the right-wing strategies against the right. He's using the same exact strategies that have been used against us and the social safety net, but now he's using it on cops. That's how you use it, I mean, of course. I mean, it's very simple. In fact, I've advocated for this before. I said we need to come up with our own Southern strategy. And what I mean by that is not appeal to racists, but on the contrary, what we do is we say something like, I support Medicare for all. Well, if you support Medicare for all, that's going to help black people more than it helps white people, because black people are disproportionately without health insurance. So when you support Medicare for all, you're helping black people more than white people, but you're also helping white people. So white people have a benefit. It's improving their condition, so they become attached to it, and they support it politically, but it helps black people more than white people. Every universal program helps marginalized people more than it helps people in the majority. But if you help the majority, they form the political base to defend your redistributive program. And similarly, if you hold the cops steady and you fund non-cop shit, the cops are being cut, because if the alternative would be a massive increase of funding to the cops. That's what Cuomo's trying to do. That's what Joe Biden did. It is actually defunding the police, but it's defunding the police in a plausibly deniable way. And then what happens? If you could show to the people that public safety is improving, then you're not going to have the arguments that we need more money for cops are going to fall. They're going to become less relevant, because if crime is decreasing, the calls for more fucking cops are much easier to defend against. Look at Larry Krasner. When Larry Krasner went into office, people were like, look at the murder rate. Larry Krasner, look at the murder rate. Larry Krasner is helping the murderers. He's on the side of the murderers. Well, now the murder rate dropped faster in Philadelphia than it ever had before, because Larry Krasner is focusing on actual crimes. And he is actually holding police accountable. And lo and behold, the progressive Soros DA has the fastest decrease in public safety offenses. And so what happens? He fucking wins in a landslide. So, like, be a little bit smarter. Leo, be a little bit smarter.
Serious crimes. And yet what they're being asked to do today is serve as mental health professionals and social workers. The same officers who thought they'd be responding to shootings are picking up the 200,000 phone calls a year of mental health calls. And what we've seen elsewhere in the country is you can actually move mental health calls out of the police department, can reduce the calls that police have to deal with by 20%. And in doing so, you can increase police response time to those major categories of crime. And I think that's important, because police have a critical role to play in public safety. And we also need to ask them to just focus on their job and not ask them to do every job. Because what we're seeing right now is these same politicians who have given us this lack of public safety over so many years telling us that their only answer, no matter the question, is to ask police to do more. I want them to do the thing that they signed up for, and to have a Department of Community Safety with teams of dedicated mental health outreach workers at the top 100 stations with the highest levels of mental health crisis. And homelessness, public safety.
And when those calls come in, and people are saying, hey, somebody's over here having an episode, the police, I think, should be going out there with the mental health professional. Let the mental health professional be the person who tries to diffuse that situation.
Backing them up.
And even if you want, I think I can't tell you how to say things, but
no, please.
If the NYPD got a budget of $10.8 billion, does all of that really need to go to the police? They're already super underpaid, so where's that money going anyway? So why not take some of that money and invest it into other alternatives to respond to things like mental health crisis?
And that's what I've said, which is that we have to work backwards from, does every dollar we spend go towards public safety? The critiques that I've said of the NYPD have been that they don't need an 80-person communications department. That doesn't actually deliver public safety. That delivers us drone footage, right? We can actually rapidly downsize that. And I've been heartened to see the current commissioner took that 80 and made it 40. And I've also said that we don't need to have a more than $1 billion police overtime budget. And usually when you say that, people frame it as if you are going after the police. But when you ask the police, there are 200 officers leaving the department every month. And one of the leading causes is forced overtime because of quality of life. They don't know when they're going home. They're working doubles and triples. This is actually something that can make it easier to do that job and ensure that we're actually responding to this, because what we have right now is not working. I sat with the family of a New Yorker named Win Rosario, who's a young New Yorker who was going through a mental health crisis. He called 911 himself, asking for help. 2 police officers who were trained in mental health assistance were dispatched to his home, and they killed him within 3 minutes on camera in front of his mother and his brother.
So they were trained in mental health?
They were trained. And my point here is that serves no one. That family grieves him every single day, and we all know that was not the way to respond to this. So why don't we actually look at what works elsewhere in the country and bring it here? And that's what we're talking about, evidence-based policy solutions that will deliver real public safety.
Hold on, maybe we're stepping on our own point. If they were trained, when you say trained in mental health, what, they were trained to know how to respond to people dealing with crisis?
These police officers were given the training that right now we're being told is sufficient. Mm-hmm. And my point here is that we should not be training police officers for mental health response. We should have mental health responders be the ones who are actually the ones there.
Gotcha.
And this addiction to asking them to do everything, mm-hmm. It's one that leaves them unable to do many things. Because right now, as you were saying, New Yorkers, when they're worried about safety, they want to know, what's your plan? 65% of crimes from the first quarter of this year are currently unresolved. That's partially because we're asking the police to do everything.
I get what you're saying.
So
you know what else they should do? Police officers should be having their own mental health evaluations. Like, that should be part of the.
It's important, and I think that's also part of why when you ask an officer to work triples, right? The longer you are on your shift, the harder it is to make the same level of decisions throughout the entirety of it. We need to ensure that we are creating the conditions where we can actually deliver that public safety.
I think one of the things about the left is the way that the left is contained is to avoid talking like this. This is the worst nightmare of the center right and the centrists and the right wing especially, is if you actually sit down and talk to the right, there is very little in the way of counter argument. And as somebody who has been in this game and read right-wing arguments, the right-wing counter argument is basically appeal to ignorance. They'll say, well, that sounds really good, but it won't work. That is basically it. There's something that you're not considering. And you'll be like, okay, like what? And they'll be like, I don't know, but there's always unintended consequences. Smug face. And then you go, well, Sweden implemented this program and it worked really well. Well, at the end of the day, the right-wing arguments all collapse into one point, which is, I don't think it's fair to make somebody pay to feed a starving child. If I'm a billionaire and I don't want to give up my money, I should be able to say no to a child starving to me. That is the basic, fundamental, floor level point of all right-wingers, which is, I shouldn't have to care about other people. It's not fair that you're making me care about other people. That is fundamentally the baseline, the structural, the foundational argument of right-wingers. And the counter to that from the left, even on that dumb point, the left can counter it on its own terms, which is, even if you are selfish, you will be better off in a society that cares for the least of us. Because of uncertainty, because of risk, you, through no fault of your own, might end up as that starving child. And so if you live in a society where that person is taken care of, your chances of living a dignified, happy life actually increase. Your uncertainty decreases. Your anxiety decreases. So although you're being forced to pay money now, eventually all of us need these things and you will be taken care of. And if you end up being the person who ends up in the top 1%, well, congratulations. Diminishing marginal value of money. Diminishing marginal utility of money means that when you have a top 1% income, that money doesn't make you happier. It starts to fall off. You know, once you start getting $100,000, $200,000, more money does not make you happier. But when you go from $25,000 to $80,000, more money significantly increases your chances of being happy. So logically, based on economics, based on what we know of human psychology, taking money from people who have a lot does not affect their happiness and their utility. And transferring it to people who don't have a lot of money does make their lives a lot better. So if you value human happiness, there is one rule, which is we need redistribution. We need to support everybody to raise them to a certain level of dignified life. And then what's really interesting is when you raise people up from the bottom, you get all sorts of diamonds in the rough, all sorts of talent that you never saw coming that actually raise the productivity of your society even more. You get more artists, you get more engineers, you get more creatives that would have been caught behind in poverty. But when you raise them up to that middle class standard, suddenly they can contribute more to society as a whole.
Seen it be able to do. At the same time, I have always believed it needs to be paired with immediate public transit improvements. I launched a campaign called Get Congestion Pricing Right with the Deputy Majority Leader of the State Senate, Mike Gianaris. The two of us won about $12 million in new bus service. I'm proud of it, but it's not enough. And the reason I fought for that is when you look at the implementation of congestion pricing in places like Stockholm, London, the first day they had it, they had increased public transit. Because I think it's important to tell New Yorkers that it's not just about raising revenue for public transit. It's also about giving them a better option right there. There are some people who need to drive. There are also others for whom that's the most convenient option. We need to make public transit the most convenient one, but it's hard when you look at your app and you're told a bus is coming in 10 minutes and then you wait 10 minutes and then that bus doesn't actually show up. And so we need to earn that trust. That's where my position is.
How is it affecting businesses in New York City, though? I mean, I know a lot of restaurants are charging a congestion fee tax, and, you know, prices are everything is expensive. I mean, the other day I went to McDonald's. I got my kids one meal, and that one meal is usually $2.99. When I was a kid, it's now $12.
You bought all your kids one meal times that hard?
Yeah, absolutely. They got to split it up. We got to split it up. That's how it's expensive out there.
That's
Jesus
crazy.
Christ.
Hey, you want to lend me some? But
That's
so,
crazy.
you know, so how is it affecting business? You know, especially small businesses. You know, the main businesses, you know, they can get over. But you know, you got that mom and pop store that just can't do it.
You know, what we've actually seen is that since it's been implemented, foot traffic has increased in the central business district. And I think that's a big part of it, is that actually when you make it easier to get around that same neighborhood, you actually can facilitate more business. And an interesting thing that I've also seen is that noise complaints are down by a significant amount because you have reduced congestion. And that's a difference also in quality of life. But I think to your point, small businesses. Mm-hmm. Small businesses are struggling in New York City. They employ a majority of all New Yorkers who are working in the private sector. We put forward a small business proposal where we would cut fines and fees for those businesses by 50% across the board. And we would do that because, you know, the city has a $113 billion budget. It is not funded through these fines and fees. It doesn't mean that much to the city if it gets $100 from a restaurant because they have a refrigerator every year. Mm-hmm. But for that restaurant, those are the kinds of things that can add up. And so we're going to cut that in half, and we're also going to make it easier to open them. Because right now, I'll tell you, you want to open a barbershop in New York City, you got to go to 7 different agencies, fill out 24 forms, and then attend 12 activities. That does not make it easy to open a barbershop. We need to actually follow the example of Pennsylvania, where they took an 8-week permitting process and made it just a couple days. And that's why we said we're going to have a mom and pop czar. We're going to increase funding for one-to-one small business services, because we have to make it easier to survive in this city. And city government has to understand its role and responsibility in that, because I'm tired of politicians pretending like we're just bystanders to all these crises. You know, I'm texting out thoughts and prayers so the small business just closed, but actually my policies are helping it to close. We need to make sure that that's not the case any longer. You know,
I want to ask you, I'm asking you to define something, but when you answer it, I want you to, you know, think about how you would define it to somebody if you was writing a rap. Now, I don't want you to rap what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying.
Look, I know you don't like the raps.
I don't want you to
don't
rap.
like the raps.
I'm just saying that the way you would approach a rap, you know the audience you're trying to talk to,
Yeah.
and you would probably keep things on the ground.
This is where I lose the election right here.
How would you define being a democratic socialist? To just somebody that.
So you know some of my favorite songs, they start with an old quote.
Mm-hmm.
That's how a song might begin. And so for me, one of them is from Dr. King. Call it democracy or call it democratic socialism. There must be a better distribution of wealth for all people in this country.
He actually says wealth and power. Martin Luther King actually says wealth and power in that quote. He's butchering the quote a little bit. Call it democracy or call it democratic socialism. I can find it. Oh my God, no, he's right. I'm wrong. He's right. I'm wrong. Fuck. This is why I love Zohran. No, he's right. He's right. He says, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, but there must be a better distribution of wealth within this country for all God's children. He's right. He does say power in a different quote, though. We must recognize that we can't solve our problem now until there is a radical redistribution of economic and political power. So that was a different quote that I was thinking of. But no, he got that quote right. I was thinking of the very next quote. The thing about Martin Luther King Jr. is he understood how important power was. So this is the quote that I would talk. I would say, we must recognize that we can't solve our problems now until there's a radical redistribution of economic and political power. That means a revolution of values and other things. We must see now that the evils of racism, economic exploitation, and militarism are all tied together. You can't get rid of one without getting rid of the others. The whole structure of American life must be changed. America is a hypocritical nation, and we must put our own house in order. That's the Martin Luther King Jr. that I support. The evils of capitalism are as real as the evils of militarism and the evils of racism.
All of God's children. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, to me, it's about dignity for each person. You know, the
70 years sub. XVX Colin, you sub to me, and then I send you a message on Discord, and you don't respond? You've given me money for 70 years in a row, and I sent you a message on Discord, and you didn't respond? You fucking ghosted me. I got ghosted by XVX Colin. I can't believe it.
The person who gave me this language of calling myself a democratic socialist is Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. When he ran in 2016 and his relentless focus on income inequality, it taught me that things could be better than they were.
My aura is
so often when
right
you're
now,
voting,
yeah.
It feels like you're voting between somebody who wants to wipe you off the face of the earth and someone else who wants to tell you to celebrate the crumbs that can't feed your neighbors. And to know that it could be more, that you could be voting for something, that has inspired me. And I think that, you know, as a Muslim democratic socialist, I am used to bad PR and having to explain what all of these things mean. And what I've found, though, is when you actually get into a conversation, a lot of this is common sense, right? If I believe that every New Yorker should be able to live a dignified life and that it's city government's job to ensure that, New Yorkers will agree with me when I bring up the example of public education.
Free education, mm-hmm. Free healthcare. Mm-hmm. What else?
I mean, anything that's necessary, right?
Stabilized rent.
It's like when people, whatever you need to live in this city, mm-hmm. that should not be something you can be priced out of. And we agree with that when it comes to school. We agree with that with libraries, with sanitation, with the fire department. But there are certain things we've picked and chosen and said, you know what? You don't need that for housing. Mm-hmm. Or you know what? You don't need that for food. And I think that we can't let the market determine who gets to live that dignified life. This is not to say that it's city government's job to deal with everything, but for that which is necessary, we have to ensure that we are doing our part. And that's why I have said I'm going to freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants, because that's the mayor's power. Mm-hmm. The last mayor did that 3 times. This mayor raised the rent 9%. He wants to raise it again up to 8%. we have these tools. It's just a question of, do we want to do this? And I know why politicians don't, because there's a lot of pressure. You know, I'm the candidate running to freeze the rent. Cuomo's the candidate running to raise the rent. That's why the landlords of those same units just gave Cuomo $2.5 million. The same landlords that say they don't have enough money to be able to freeze the rent just found $2.5 million to give it to him. The single largest check in this entire race. But it helps let people know that's what's on the ballot. It's straightforward. It's, do you want your rent to be the same, or do you want it to raise?
I saw your rent was $2,300 a month.
Yes, sir. $2,300 for a 1-bedroom in Astoria.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It was 500 square feet.
It's not too much more than that. Let me tell you.
You know, it's interesting, right? Because Democrats have created all this new politically correct language for everything: gender, sexuality, pregnant women. How come y'all haven't found a better way to discuss socialism? Why is socialism a dirty word when essentially all you want to do is take care of people?
I don't think it should be. I think it's actually a word that, when you break down its meaning, like you just have done, is one that many Americans agree with. And we've seen that despite all the attempts, Bernie Sanders continues to be one of the most popular politicians in America. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, similarly. And they have both defined themselves in that same language. And I think it's that...
But I think it's because they tell, more so nowadays, instead of just leaning on the word socialism, they just tell people, you should have free health care. You should have a free education. You should be able to make a livable wage. You know, they should increase the minimum wage. Like, those are just simple concepts that are all socialism.
Yeah.
But for some reason, y'all still find yourselves tripping up over that word, or letting the other side use it as a dirty word.
I think it's because there are a lot of people making a lot of money in this moment who would want Americans to think that that's the only way life can be. And I don't hide this. You know, it's how I see the world. It's the world that I want. It's one of dignity. And it's funny, there's this one guy who comments under almost every one of my tweets, and he's like, he's a socialist. I'm like, yeah, it's in my bio. You know, this is who I am. And I think it's about being honest with New Yorkers. Because I've found, you know, Mayor Koch said this, that if you agree with me on 9 out of 12 issues, vote for me. 12 out of 12, see a psychiatrist. And I found that in New Yorkers, an ability to say, look, maybe I wouldn't call myself the same word, but I want the same things. And ultimately, you have to have a coalition that asks people of just one thing.
If you agree with me out of 12 things, you don't need therapy. If you agree with me at 12 out of 12 things, you don't need therapy. If you disagree with me on 1 out of 12 things, get some help.
We need to make the city affordable. We can have disagreement, we can have tension, but we have to have agreement on that one thing so that we can build a coalition that looks like the city of New York.
Now,
Mike, I very much enjoy your daily copium and LARP of some revolution. There will be no revolution, Tubby. You can't even run a mile. Actually, I absolutely can. I think you maybe be describing Asmongold. The second thing is, this guy's about to, somebody who I agree with and have been supporting for 6 years, is about to become the mayor of the largest city in America. And Donald Trump's approval rating is dropping faster than Asmongold's life expectancy.
Sorry, but you are climbing the polls. Like, you just came out of nowhere, right? Why do you think the young people are riding with you?
You know, I think it's because people are hungry.
Because in the beginning, they didn't throw your name in the hat at first. It was just.
Look, let me tell you, I was sitting in a coffee shop in Astoria. This is right before we launched the campaign. Somebody in politics showed me a poll. And I was looking at the beginning of the poll, and they were like, no, keep looking. Keep looking. And then I was there at 1%.
Damn.
They were like...
That's what you said.
Right.
Yeah.
How'd you make the poll rise?
Pause.
You know, I think just by being consistent.
Yeah.
You know, from the beginning of the race, from October 23rd, the first day, I said this was a campaign about affordability. I said this was a campaign about New Yorkers who have built this city, who are being pushed out of this city. And I said that I was going to do 3 things. I was going to freeze the rent. I was going to make the slowest buses in America fast and free. I was going to deliver universal childcare. And it got to the point where I can go to a rally and I can say, I'm going to freeze and the crowd will say rent. Buses fast and free. Universal childcare. People know. And I think for too long, politics has become about a person as opposed to a platform. And New Yorkers see themselves in that. And, you know, growing up in this city, so many of the people that have helped to raise me, that I've grown up with, they haven't always seen themselves in our politics. They have, you know, they haven't voted in a lot of these elections. The last mayoral primary, 26% of Democrats voted. And most New Yorkers, when you ask them, when's the election? They'll tell you it's in November. not in June. Most people don't know about the importance of the primary. But I've been getting text messages from people that I've known for years and people that I've just met, just screenshots of voter registration that I'm going to vote for the first time. Wow. And that's meant the world to me, because if we really want to protect our democracy, one of the best ways of doing so is that people see themselves in it. People see themselves as participants. You can't protect it at an intellectual level. You have to protect it at an everyday level. And ultimately, going back to your question about democratic socialism, it's about extending that democracy from the ballot box to the rest of our lives. If you get to choose your own leaders, why shouldn't you be able to choose the economic conditions that you're living in? Why shouldn't you be able to ensure you have that dignity? And I think that what's so exciting is, as you said, a lot of this is powered by young people. You know, young people who so often political analysts will say, don't worry about them. They don't vote at the same rates. They don't come out. And it's been so exciting to see those same young people be part of the 34,000 volunteers we have. You know, it took us months to knock 150,000 doors in this city. Last week, we knocked that in 7 days alone. That's the level of momentum we're at, where people are just going all across the city. And my mother is one of these canvassers. Yeah. She has her weekly canvassing shift on Sunday. She's paired up with a 25-year-old who she complains walks too fast. They go up 6th floor walk up, and she goes through 10 consecutive not doors, not homes. And then when she finally meets a voter and they say they're going to vote for me, she says, "That's my son." And it's that sense of everyone is a part of this.
They say they're not.
She don't even tell them. She don't tell them. She don't tell them. She's like, I have my concerns as well.
But let me ask you, if you were the mayor and you see what's going on in L.A., how would you handle that problem? If there was protesters, they were, breaking stuff, looting, smashing police cars, vandalizing things. Of course, Trump sending the troops. How would you handle that if you were mayor of New York City and that actually happened here?
I think first and foremost, you call it what it is. It's authoritarianism. This is the Trump administration looking to arrest enough migrants that they can say they fulfilled their campaign promise of building the single largest deportation force in American history. And too often we think about it as just an attack on immigrants. It's an attack on the fabric of this country. And it's not just in LA. I mean, we have New Yorkers who have been arrested and detained today. A few days ago marked 3 months since a Palestinian New Yorker named Mahmoud Khalil was arrested in his apartment building lobby, taken away from his pregnant wife, Noor, and has since been in an ICE detention facility in Louisiana. He wasn't able to even witness the birth of his first child, Dean. And we have another New York City public high school student named Dylan, who was snatched at a regular check-in at Federal Plaza, is now hundreds of miles away from his mother and his 2 siblings. And this is personal for me because I got my citizenship just blocks from where those arrests are happening. Those blocks used to be my favorite part of New York City. It's where I got my citizenship, where I got married. And those are now the same blocks where, when I took my father for his immigration interview this year, I hugged him so tight because I didn't know if I was going to see him in the afternoon. There are too many New Yorkers who are feeling that. And so I think you call this what it is. You also make clear that Trump is reversing historical precedent in that calling the National Guard is typically something a governor requests of the president. It's not something a president puts on a governor. And Kathy Hochul is someone who, as the governor of our state, has been able to fight Donald Trump and defend a lot of his potential attacks on this state. One of the first things I would do is work with her to make it clear that this has no room in our city. And our police force should not be assisting ICE in what they are conducting. We recently saw arrests where the NYPD was then arresting a pastor and other New Yorkers who were observing ICE arresting migrants coming in for their check-ins. We don't need to be accomplices to authoritarianism. We need to show that there's another way of running this city and this country, and that's who I'm excited to be.
Could you explain to people why federal overreach is dangerous?
It's so funny to see Republicans for whom so long their rallying cry has been states' rights. And now here they are. They don't have a concern for that at all. It's the same way that they used to care about free speech. That's gone as well. Ultimately, these are principles they only hold when are convenient to them. And what's so dangerous about this is that we have a clear delineation of what is a federal responsibility, what is a state responsibility, but Donald Trump wants to make every responsibility his. He wants to run a country in a manner that is more befitting of an authoritarian state. And I think what's so concerning is he's looking at the example of someone like Nayib Bukele and saying that this style of leadership, of having mass prisons where we send so many people who we allege are criminals, no matter whether we can find it or not.
That's El Salvador.
Yeah, that's what he wants to bring to this country. And I think what we need are Democrats who are willing to stand up and fight that. You know, we have a mayor right now who has wanted to fearmonger around sanctuary city policy. This is a policy we've had in this city for decades. It's a policy that's been defended by Republicans and Democrats alike. It allows for the city to work with the federal government if someone is convicted on 170 serious crimes. What it says, however, is outside of those, there should not be that collaboration. And, you know, I'm sure, you know, you've heard of Kilmar, the man in Maryland, who was taken to El Salvador. If the city he was arrested in by ICE had sanctuary city laws, he would not have been able to be picked up. That's what we're preventing from happening. And still, with what we have in place, because we have a mayor who doesn't want to enforce it, because we have a mayor who wants to collaborate, still we see New Yorkers being picked up.
Let me ask you a question, right? Why is Donald Trump the Democrats' boogeyman? Because none of y'all are running against Trump. And to me, the biggest hurdle to the Democratic Party is the Democratic Party. The inaction of the Democratic Party over all of these years is the biggest hurdle for the Democratic Party now.
I don't disagree with you. That's part of my critique of Andrew Cuomo, is that he's the very kind of leadership that helped give rise to Donald Trump. You know, before Donald Trump was the president of this country, before he was a reality TV show host, he was a real estate developer in New York City. And he was someone who both parties had room for and time for. And I think that our ability to accommodate the very kind of real estate developers that have broken law after law after law is also part of what has given rise to an era of politics with no accountability. I mean, Andrew Cuomo had a video of Donald Trump playing at his own bachelor party. Like, that's the level in which all of this is enmeshed together. And I'm trying to chart a new course with this campaign alongside thousands of New Yorkers for a politics that is clearly distinct from that of Donald Trump. And I think when New Yorkers are shocked at Donald Trump's record of cutting Medicaid, of trying to steal hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA, of giving tax breaks to billionaires, of hounding the many women who have credibly come forward to accuse him, those are the same things you could say about Andrew Cuomo. We don't need a reflection of that in New York City. We need someone who is the opposite of that. And as a progressive Muslim immigrant who's willing to fight for the things I believe in, that's what makes me Donald Trump's worst nightmare.
But I saw you say that in the debate, you know, you would be Trump's worst nightmare. But once again, why should that matter to anybody voting for you now? Because you're not running against Donald Trump.
No, but you are running against the authoritarianism that he's bringing to this city.
So you think Cuomo's an authoritarian?
No, I think that there's too many commonalities between him and Donald Trump's record. And my point is that you don't want to have a mayor who has to pick up a phone call from someone who cut a $250,000 check to both him and Donald Trump. You want to have a mayor who's willing to fight for the city and have that be the thing that he's ultimately responsible for. And I think, to your point, we also have to be honest about how we lost this presidential election. You know, New York is the state that had the largest swing in the country towards Donald Trump, 11.5 points. And it happened far from the caricature of Trump voters. It happened in the hearts of immigrant New York City. I went to Fordham Road in the Bronx. I went to Hillside Avenue in Queens. And when I asked New Yorkers there, almost all of whom were Democrats, who did you vote for and why? Many told me they didn't vote. Many told me they voted for Trump. And they told me they voted for him because they remembered having more money in their pocket 4 years ago for their rent, for their child care, for their groceries, even for their Metro card.
They remember how they feel. Yeah.
And as insincere and ridiculous and horrific as we know Trump's policies to be, that is how people felt. Those are the decisions that they made. And when I asked these same New Yorkers, what would it take to bring you back to the Democratic Party? They said a relentless focus on an economic agenda. I said, what would you say to a candidate running to freeze the rent, make buses fast and free, deliver universal child care? I said I'd vote for him. And that's when I introduced myself. And that's my point here, is that there are some Democrats like Andrew Cuomo who think that we went too far left in how we ran a campaign. And my point is that we actually betrayed working class voters a long time ago. And it's time to own up to that and finally fulfill the promises that were made decades ago.
Well, that's interesting, right? Because, you know, you say Cuomo and Trump have so many similarities, but Cuomo has been a career Democrat. And that's why I feel like anybody who is going to be the future of the Democratic Party, you do have to throw that old regime under the bus. Because it's not just Cuomo.
But that bus is going to be free.
Oh, sure. but it's not just Cuomo in the Democratic Party. It's a lot of old leadership.
Absolutely.
It's the Chuck Schumers. It's the Bidens. You got to throw all of that under the bus and run it over And people have to hear you say that, because I keep hearing y'all, you keep talking about Trump.
No, but
your party has been just as ineffective and just as corrupt in a lot of ways.
Trust me, I hear you, because I've been critical about the style of leadership that gave rise to Donald Trump. Is also a style of leadership within the Democratic Party. And I think for too long, it's been a party that has valued insider politics, pay your dues, the words and advice of consultants over the people that are Democrats themselves. And I do think it's time for a new generation of leadership. Cuomo would be the oldest.
Somebody's looking at mayor election polls. They're like, is he going to win? They're like, oh my God, is he going to win? They're getting hyped. They're like, oh, is he going to win?
Mayor elected in New York City. I would represent a completely new generation. And I think it's important for that because
I actually think he's going to win pretty easily, chat. Cuomo is a paper tiger. And this is something that I want you to understand something. Zohran's campaign demonstrates that I'm right. I have said from the beginning that these centrist Democrats, and I've been saying it for 6 months before the election, that these centrist Democrats are paper tigers. Nobody likes these people. But we've all enslaved ourselves to the idea that the only thing we can do is run in the Democratic Party. The only thing we can do, we got to compromise. And it's like, no, we don't. You don't have to compromise. You run someone passionate. You run someone charismatic. You run somebody who cares about the people and is connected to the people, and the money will be there. The volunteers will be there. And most importantly, the votes will be there. And the number one way, the number one reason that we hold ourselves back as a society and a world is because we've been convinced that there's some other out there that is just won't go along with us. But in reality, the vast majority of people are with us. They want universal health care. They want affordable child care. They want good schools. They want a clean environment. They want high quality public transit. They want clean streets and safe streets. They want good quality public housing. People want peace. They don't want war. On every major issue, we are right. We have the people behind us. But what we lack is the confidence and the strengths and the courage of our convictions. That is what is holding us back, is so many liberals who have been convinced through television screens or monitors or some person that they are parasocially attracted to, that, oh, this is not the convenient season. We have to compromise. We can't go that fast. It's too fast to travel in the direction of injustice. And it's like, no, we have to stop it. We have to go faster. That is the only way. If we're going to solve climate change, we're not going to solve it by compromising with oil and gas companies. We're going to solve it by defeating oil and gas companies. And that is a contradiction. You cannot compromise with the disease. You can't compromise with cancer. It must be eradicated or you die. The United States is flaunting the anti-communist banner everywhere in order to perpetuate aggression against other countries. The United States owes debts everywhere. The whole world, Britain included, dislikes the United States. The masses of the people dislike it. Japan dislikes it. None of these countries in the East is free from U.S. aggression. The United States has invaded our Taiwan province. Japan, Korea, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Pakistan all suffer from U.S. aggression, although some of them are allies of the United States. The people are dissatisfied. And in some countries, so are the authorities. All oppressed nations want independence. It's important that we recognize that that is the reality, that is the truth. And when we emancipate ourselves from fear, justice will reign. And everybody who's a centrist, everybody who's a moderate, everybody who is a conservative is a coward. They are fundamentally a coward deep down. They are paralyzed by fear. That is what makes them conservative. That is what makes them right wing. Fear.
It's not just about age. It's not just about vision. It's also about what has your record been and who have you been fighting for? And is that distinct enough from what got us here?
Yeah, I just got a couple more questions. You said de Blasio was the best mayor in your lifetime for New York. And you gave 3 reasons. You said because he ended stop and frisk. Well, yeah, he ran on ending stop and frisk, taxing the rich, and funding universal pre-K. You said he got a lot of that done. How much of it did he get done?
Universal pre-K, I think, is one of the...
And why conversations about affordability, free healthcare, making buses free, freezing the rent on rent-stabilized apartments. Why is that considered far left?
Come on.
I'm just saying, why is it?
It's common sense.
Why can't y'all message that better? Like, why? Like, I think.
By the way, it's not far left. It's center left. It's center left. Far left is me. You don't. If I actually told you what far left is, you would be scared. You would be uncomfortable. I'm far left. Okay? None of this is far left. Far left is scary. Left, center left, like Zohran, is not. AOC, Zohran, Bernie are not far left. They are center left. I am far left. There is a big... Now, I like them because they create space for me to exist. Bernie Sanders and Zohran, they're going to let me continue to propagandize and push for the actual far left. When I start the American land reform movement, they are the people who are going to let me get away with it. That's why I support them. Because I've studied history. And it is social democrats and center leftists who give the far left the space they need. I don't want right-wingers in because they might try to clamp down. I want people like these to be in power, so I have the space that I need. It's not that complicated. It's strategic on my part. Also, I think the working class will be stronger if they have labor unions, if they have healthcare, if they have education, if they have a good, secure base to build off of. They're going to be stronger. And when stuff gets taken away, they'll be madder, and they'll know who to blame. That helps me.
You got to get rid of that word socialism. You know, my man Killer Mike used to tell Bernie Sanders to use the term compassionate capitalism. Or maybe just talk about what it is you want to do constantly instead of getting caught up in those labels.
I mean, I think it's both important to tell people where this belief comes from, but what I always foreground is what this belief will mean for someone. You know, people want to know, how are you going to help them in their life, in their struggle? The reason we focus this entire campaign on affordability is that's what New Yorkers told us. When you ask them, what are you struggling with? They'll tell you rent. They'll tell you childcare. They'll even tell you public transit. Because I know to many people, $2.90 doesn't feel like a lot. 1 in 5 New Yorkers cannot afford a Metro card. That's the state of inequality in this city. While income inequality has declined in the country, it's increased in New York City. This is the wealthiest city in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And so, to what you're saying, these are common sense policies. And also when they're polled, they even sometimes have supportive majority of Republicans because they speak to what people are actually going through.
That's it. All people want is some more money in their pocket, and they want to feel safe. Look, that's it.
Well, if they want to support you, how can they go out and support you?
Well, what I would tell them is come to ZohranforNYC.com. Don't donate to us. We've already raised the maximum we can spend in this campaign, but do give us something more valuable, which is your time. We're building a team of 34,000 people, New Yorkers from all walks of life, knocking on doors, talking to their neighbors. Come on out, canvas. It would be a joy to have you. And I would also say that if the 3 of you want to come canvas, we'd love to have you as well.
Thank you.
Well, we residents in New Jersey, but...
Oh, come on. So look, just bring that corporate tax rate. Bring that corporate tax rate over from New Jersey.
Man, don't say that.
When's the election?
June 24th. But early voting starts June 14th. And we're confident we can win this, but only with the help of New Yorkers.
Well, good luck.
Thank you so much.
Zohran Kwame Mamdani. I appreciate it.
Mamdani. Hit it one more time.
All right. Zohran Kwame Mamdani.
There we go.
My goodness. My goodness.
Make that poll rise.
Let's get the polls up. There you go.
Wow.
It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.
Wake that ass up.
In the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Impeccable vibes, impeccable. I mean, the only reason you would be against Zohran Mamdani is because you are an ideological neoliberal freak.
Changing your ways, change your ways. We're changing your